taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
I ain't taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
Oh. Hang on. Sorry. Technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on.
We can sit here and talk like this.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know what's going on with the background, but how are you, everybody? Welcome back to the Celtics. Oh, there it is. I got it. Hey, there it is. All right. Sorry about that. But welcome to the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I'm your host, Ian, and I'm with my co-host, Seamus. Seamus, the Celtics probably played their best game that they've played all season tonight.
You know, well, I had a post-game show-off. We had a post-game show-off after the Phoenix game. I was a little under the weather, not going to lie. And it wasn't because of that game. But, you know, regrouping these last couple of days, these last 2 days on the team, I think I've come to a conclusion, especially after tonight. I'm going to step back and look at this in a broad, long-term view, because I think that's what it should be viewed as. This team should be viewed as right now, and it was viewed as this coming into the season. But I think we were all in this washing machine of, ooh, we got Dennis Schroeder and all these nice, good, solid pieces. But at the end of the day, I don't think this team is competing for a title. I know we just beat the Milwaukee Bucks by 14 points, but this is the cycle. We drop a absolutely horrible game in Phoenix on Friday. Granted, last game of a West Coast road trip, something to be said about that, but you drop that game in just horrible fashion. You come home, and now you beat the Milwaukee Bucks and leave no doubt. It doesn't make any sense. This team makes no sense, and I think if you look at it in a broad view, where is this team really going right now? They're 14-14, I believe, or 13-13, 14-14, whatever they are right now. They're 14-14. They're 500, and this report comes out earlier. I think we have to talk about this in the span of this whole post-game show here. Dennis Schroeder might be moved later in the season, which was kind of expected because he's on a one-year deal and he's on a bargain of a deal. But if you're just gonna give up your third leading scorer for, I don't know what they can get for him, quite honestly, because he's going to be somebody championship contenders want, and they're not going to be willing to give up other championship level pieces for him. Yeah. And so I just feel as if even we come in here now and we can sit and say this is such a great win, but I don't think it means anything in the long run. I think that this team is slightly better than a 500 team. I think we're going to continuously go on the cycle of, we have these good wins like this against the Milwaukee Bucks. This is the second win against the Bucks this season. But then we're going to have those games where we lose games to the Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns. Obviously, those are West Coast road trip games, and we won't see those teams again outside of the Suns and Clippers. But I just don't see how this team still, like even with tonight's win, I thought there were some fundamental things in the first half that I thought the Bucks did way better than the Celtics, and I thought the Bucks played well throughout the whole night. They just simply didn't hit shots throughout the last three quarters, it seemed, and it's really hard to sit here and talk about this team because I want to be optimistic about where we're going, but I think this is really shaping up into this team is trying to splurge next offseason, and we're just on a path right now to that, because I think the Dennis Schroeder report today, that was a huge reminder of that, and also this team's record right now is a huge reminder of that. And I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer on this great win, because ultimately at the end of the day, I love when teams compete and when teams win or lose, but man, I don't know. I don't see this season being anything. I don't see it being beneficial in any way, really, at all. And that's my thing right now. And I think we're just in this loop still. I don't want to get too caught up in a win, or I don't want to get too caught up in a loss. We're just in a loop. We just have to get through it. I I don't know. We could deep dive on this. I want to get your opinion though, because I've been talking too long now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you're talking about. Now, I agree with you in the sense that I don't think the Celtics are championship contenders. I don't think this win gets them any closer to that. Although, I mean, I don't know if I'm going along with the Celtics can just be a 500 team and, I mean, obviously we've seen it happen before and it very well could be, but I do feel like this team is a lot better than a 500 team. Granted, I still don't think we're championship contenders by any means, but like, I mean, I don't know, if a team is hot at the right time and something happens to where maybe the Celtics can go on a run. Maybe there's more injuries again in the playoffs, but I mean, I kind of agree with you in that sense, but at the
But
same
see, like
time,
I'm. This is the whole thing with the whole like playoff run. I think we can make a run, but I don't like. Where is it going? I don't like.
well, no,
Is it
because like I
really
agree
at this
with you.
point? There's here. Yeah. I know that, but I'm saying like in the playoffs. That's the thing I'm frustrated with. I totally like we see eye to eye on this, but in the thing that frustrates me really about this season that's becoming apparent even after this win tonight. Like I almost hate that we won this game because I feel like there are a lot of things that still need to be addressed with this team that are just fundamental in whether or not like are you winning a championship? What are you trying to do for the future? And right now the team is still they have a plan, but I feel like this season they're kind of stuck in no man's land still because they have all this depth, but I'm not sure. Some of my argument the other day, or sorry, I didn't do this on a live, so no one heard this. But my whole thing with the Celtics is they have a lot of depth, but I'm not sure they have a lot of depth that fits together necessarily. Like we need shooters out there. We need shooters straight up. Tonight, you saw the ball movement, how great it was at times, and a lot of the time, mostly it occurred in the first half. We were getting wide open shots, and we were simply missing them. Now, throughout the game, that progressively got better, and you hope it gets better. But right now, we're sitting at game 27, 28, and it's still at a medium level. You're not in the upper echelon of the league, and I just feel like this Celtics team, like this team is not going anywhere. I feel like they could make the semifinals this year, but then what does that do for you moving forward? What does that do? And is that the goal this year, just to make the semifinals or the conference finals? What is this team's goal now that you have this guy Dennis Schroeder who you're relying heavily upon right now, but now you're going to move him quite possibly at the deadline? And I don't know. We should go into a deep dive on this. I'm rambling too much. I want to get into solid points here, but go ahead because we need to talk about this game individually.
yeah. So I mean, let's get into this game individually. I mean, we can definitely talk about where the Celtics go from here later on in the show. I mean, we got all the time in the world to talk about it, but let's talk about this game specifically. Jayson Tatum, season high, 42 points tonight. Had an absolutely insane game, shot 64% from the field, 53.8% from three, 7 of 13 from three. Had an amazing game. Jaylen Brown's return. Jaylen Brown looked really solid. He had 19 points on 46% shooting from the field. What do you make of this game tonight, Seamus?
This is I don't try to put too much stock in a win nowadays or a loss. I just don't know. I feel like here's the thing with this team. I feel like it's very unfair to judge the team on what we've seen recently entirely. If you were just to look at it overall and go, this is what this team is, I think that's unfair to say because no Jaylen Brown. At the end of the day, Jaylen Brown is your second or even top player on this team, second best player or the top player on this team at times. And to not have him in the lineup is huge. And that being said, too, there's this talk that, people want to split up Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. It doesn't really make any sense why that's the narrative right now because we really have not seen them play together at a level in which Jaylen Brown is comfortable playing. I mean, we saw them in those 5 games where he came back, but he wasn't healthy. Scratch those 5 games. We haven't seen them play together since the Miami game back in mid-November, and that's a long time. That's nearly a month and a half now, and I think once you see these guys play together, then that's when you can make your judgment. And I think the judgment of whether or not these two can fit together will come in the next couple of not maybe next couple of months, but maybe this year and certainly next year. And that's when Jaylen will have 1 year left on his contract after next season. And that's when you could possibly see this duo being broken up, in my opinion. That is how long they have to fix this. But right now, it doesn't make any sense for those two to be split apart. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever because they really haven't been together. Last year, injuries completely plagued the team. This year, starting to do the same. Jaylen was obviously out. But tonight's game, you saw how good those two can be together on the floor and when they're hitting at the same time. And that's really the key to the Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum relationship, is them hitting at the same time, because most of their problems, they don't really come in the numbers that they put up. It comes in the fact that it's Jason turns now. It's Jason turn. It's now Jaylen's turn. It's now Jason's turn. It's now Jaylen's turn. It can't go turn by turn. It has to go, you guys are hitting right now, both in the second quarter. It's not, it's going to be Jason's first and Jaylen's second and Jason's third. That can't happen. And I just think when they're hitting at the same time, that is when you see the best Celtics. That is when you see the best team version come out of the Celtics. And tonight, too, you have to give credit to the entire team. They moved the ball like crazy tonight. I was writing a piece about them earlier, and it hasn't come out yet, but I mentioned something about their ball moving in there, and now I'm going to have to revise it because, geez, tonight, what did they have? Did they have 29? Did they reach 30 assists tonight?
Yeah, they had
Not really
31 assists as a team to 11 turnovers.
So a couple of garbage time assists puts them over 30 assists. That's absolutely ridiculous against this Bucks team. That's exactly what they needed tonight, and this was a great win. This is your model Celtics win right here, but I still think this team, there's some fundamental problems, as in shooting wasn't particularly good in the first half. It turned up in the second half. And again, I've harped on this so many times. The off-ball movement that this team lacks is going to kill them eventually, and does typically kill them, because if you're not getting stops and points off of turnovers, which they did do tonight, another great area for the Celtics tonight, points off of turnovers. If you're not doing that, and say you're not making it to the line, and you're not hitting your open shots, that's when the offense starts to stall. That's when you got guys going isolation like Tatum and Brown and Schroeder, and then just throwing up shots, prayers. They're prayers. And tonight, this is your model Celtics win, but I still think there are some fundamental things with the team in terms of off-ball movement, in terms of just creating this consistently, creating this performance consistently that we just haven't seen so far. And hopefully we can see it over this next, couple of weeks, because the schedule's still hard as shit right now. And to be, quite honest here, it is. And, I think moving forward, if you can play like this, we'll see good results, but I'm not convinced that we will see this consistently. But then again, Jaylen Brown's back. Who knows? He does look healthy out there.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of said a lot, and there's a lot to kind of go over with that.
I'm just rambling on. We haven't been on here in 3 days. I know.
We've had a lot of time to think about this team, and I mean, I personally wasn't really prepared to talk about that, but I mean, as I can go along, I can think about some of the points that you were talking about. I agree with you. Off-ball movement, this team needs to learn how to cut more to the basket. Romeo Langford does a pretty good job of it when he's out there, and I mean, he had a pretty solid game tonight with it. I mean, granted, he didn't shoot the best from three, but that's not really what I think he should be used for. I think he should be used for cutting to the basket. They should have guys, Nesmith, they should have Romeo do that, they should have Grant do that. Although Grant had a really good night shooting the three tonight, so that's encouraging to see that we might have a legitimate 3-and-D player in Grant Williams. Maybe. I'm not going to say that for 100% fact, but we might have that in Grant Williams. But I agree with you. The biggest problem with this team, in my opinion, is the fact that they can't be consistent. I mean, we beat the Trailblazers 145. We dropped the most points we've dropped on all season. And then go on a 3-game losing streak. Our defense looks terrible. Our offense isn't much better. And then we come back home against one of the best teams in the league, in the Milwaukee Bucks. We go out there, we play the best game they've had all season, arguably tonight, And I don't know. I kind of agree with you where I think we can't look at what the Celtics have done this season so far. I feel like if Jaylen Brown can stay healthy for the next, let's just say he plays the next 30 games. Let's just say that. He plays the next 30 games, no injuries, no problem. He's Jaylen Brown. Jayson Tatum somehow finds consistency. Let's just say we have that. Can you arguably can you make an assumption about this team? Now, I agree with your assumption about them right now. I think they're just above a 500 team. They're probably going to end up finishing the season with about 4 wins over 500. They're going to be in middle of the road in the lottery. They might win a playoff series. And then we go into next year. So what do the Celtics need to do then to convince you that they're trying to be legit this season?
Well, first of all, they need to consistently put together wins because, like you just mentioned, you drop 145 points on the Blazers, and you're looking pretty good in December. You're looking 2-1 in December. It's looking pretty good so far. It's looking in your favor. Then you go and drop 3 straight games, make it 2-4, and then you come home and play one of your best games of the season against one of the best teams in the league, and that's bringing out that's characteristics of a 500 team right there. That's pure characteristics of a team that it goes back and forth between their lulls. And I think just putting together wins really for me is number one, because at the end of the day, winning matters more than most other things, most everything. I think it's sports, and winning. If you go on a win streak, that propels the front office to go, okay, well, maybe we have a chance to do something in the playoffs potentially. Like, you have to beat some of these good teams, right? You have to beat the Phoenix Suns. You have to beat the Brooklyn Nets. You have to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, which, hey, we've done this season so far, thankfully. But you have to beat these teams, and the Warriors coming up again twice this month. You have to beat these teams, or at least be competitive against these teams, to convince ownership and the front office that, hey, we have a chance. So winning games, period, consistently, winning games against good teams, and putting it together over the next month and a half is going to be important, and it's going to be telling on where this team now goes for the rest of the season. Because if they're floating, like I said, if they're floating around 500, they go 8-9 this month, or 9-8, they're just floating around 500 by January. The ownership and the front office, they're not going to look at this and go, yeah, let's just pay the tax. Let's just pay $14 million worth of tax for a team that's going to be a 7 seed and that's going to lose to, who knows in the first round, the Bulls, the Bucks, the Nets, who knows if we're that low. They're not going to look at that and go, yeah, we want to pay the tax. If we're 500 mid-January or into February, we're going to be total sellers. And then this season is going to be a complete throwaway, just like last season where we were sellers at the deadline, where I don't know if anybody noticed, we gave up Tice for literally nothing last year. Cornette and some Mo Wagner minutes, great. And it's going to be a loss. It's another lost season for Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. And that's why I feel like we need to take the broad view of this season was kind of set up so that the team could be competitive this season, but also splurge potentially next offseason in 2022. And that's, I think, what we're heading to. That is the grand plan, is that offseason. If a star becomes available, I think we're going to be star hunting next offseason. I just think that's what it's come down to. You need another star on this team somewhere next to Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. And right now, it's really just this filler season in which we all kind of convince ourselves, hey, we might have a chance. But in the end, I think we're just a slightly better than 500 team. And it's going to continue to be this way until we get another star, which is going to be next offseason, because that's exactly how they structured all of this last offseason with the Marcus Smart extension, the Robert Williams extension, the Josh Richardson extension, and then obviously signing Dennis Schroeder to only a 1-year contract as well at a total bargain. And I don't think I'll ever be convinced that this team is serious unless they go on some crazy run here. And they have to be over 10 games, maybe 500 by February for me to take them seriously as a contender. And I think even then you have to beat these good teams. Like I said, you have to beat the Suns. You can't put up a performance like Friday against the Suns. You can't put that up and say, oh yeah, we're going to be competitive. No, the Phoenix Suns were missing 2 of their top 3 players. We were missing one of our top 2 players, and they absolutely whooped us. absolutely whooped us, and it was all because of their system, their effort, their energy, and their identity, something that we still don't really have with this team. And, it sucks. It doesn't really sound like we won tonight, but this is the grand view of the Celtics. It's next offseason. I think right now it's just a slow, I've been trying to keep optimism here on this pre and post game show, but I don't know. This West Coast road trip kind of broke me. I mean, it's like, what, really, 1-4? We should have gone 3-2 theoretically. We went 1-4.
Yeah.
And those are just inexplicable losses, and you just can't get those out of your mind. At the end of the day, I just cannot get. We suffered these over and over again last season. If this is just going to happen this year, I mean, go Celtics. But man, it's bad. We're in a position in which, are we going to be competitive right now, or should we actually tank? Not for the first pick, but if you look at our draft order right now, we're drafting 12th or 13th. So
you're thinking,
if you sell the house at the deadline and you move down a couple of spots, say the Pacers or the Raptors jump you might be picking in the top 10. Who knows? And then you can use that to move somewhere, which fits in with the grand plan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know really how to assess this team right now. I mean, I've been kind of saying this for most of the season.
Impossible.
It really is impossible to really, at this point, actually, I kind of, I went away from being somewhat of a pessimist of this team, and at this point, I'm just kind of riding the wave to see what they do, because I feel like I've been over-criticizing every little game they do and every single thing that happens in the game, but at this point, I feel like I'm just going to ride the wave with this team. Whether this team wants to be a 500 team or not, whether this team wants to go on a 16-game winning streak or not, if they want to tank or not. At this point, I feel like I'm just going to ride the wave with them. If they tank, we'll have a lot more to talk about, I guess, or we'll have a lot less to talk about, really. I don't really know where it'll go. Exactly. So, we really don't know where anything is going to go from here.
Well, this is a bad spot to be in, because you've said it so many times, and I've heard it from other people too, around their 500 teams this season. Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different result.
Yes, and we're in this loop. This is why I don't want to get too overhyped about tonight's win, because normally I've done this a couple times this season where, we beat the Bucks the first time without Giannis, granted, and we beat the Lakers, and we beat, who else did we beat outright here this season?
Oh, Philly.
We beat Miami. We beat Philly. All of these games, you come away with really, really solid wins, and then it's all washed away by losses or just performances that are not up to par whatsoever. And that's not how you consistently build a basketball team, where you look at a team like the game against the Suns the other night. If there's a point, if this team turns out to be 500 by the end of the season, and at the end of the season, whatever, we write pieces or whatever at the end of the season, this game on Friday that we didn't have a post game for, ironically, this game on Friday against the Phoenix Suns, the last Friday, I thought was the moment in which I just came to a realization that the Celtics are nowhere near competing with the best at all. I had suspicions about this Celtics team. They don't have any off-ball movement. Their defensive effort, is good, and they're a good defensive team. They're good at rotating. They're good at communicating on ball, and they have good on-ball defenders. That needs to come consistently, more. We've seen it, but it needs to come more often still. And this team, I just feel like, quite honestly, I just lost my train of thought. But the Celtics,
yeah.
At least I'm not at a political debate right now where I'm just energy, and I don't know. But this team is good defensively, but not consistently good defensively. And offensively, I don't feel like they have the pieces to succeed offensively consistently enough to compete with the best. And I thought the Phoenix Suns game, this is what I was talking about, was very telling on Friday, because you look at one side of the court, you look at the Phoenix Suns, and they clearly have an identity. They clearly have a system in which they believe in. They clearly have something built there with their head coach, with their point guard, and just with their players in general. And even without two of their three best players the other night, they were able to whoop the Celtics, because the Celtics, they don't really have an identity. They have somewhat of an identity on the defensive end of the floor, but like I said, we need to see it more consistently. It needs to be more of a consistent night in and night out thing from them. The Celtics just shutting teams down, which they've done relatively well this season, but it needs to come every single night. And Friday night, I just thought it was so telling that you looked at one side, and there was a team that just knew themselves from top to bottom, knew what they were doing the entire game, and another team that came in looking like they were searching. They're always searching for results. If the Celtics, if they don't hit their first shot, if their first action isn't there, they're always searching. There isn't something secondary that they go to, like the Bucks, like the Warriors, like the Nets, like the Suns. They all have this secondary offense that they know they can go to, and their players believe in. And the Celtics team, they just don't have it. And that's really where I just thought it was very evident the other night against the Phoenix Suns that the Celtics, they just weren't, they're not going to be a championship contender this year. I thought that was probably evident to a lot of other fan bases this year, but I thought, maybe something happens here with this team. I think we're better than 500, but I don't think we're a championship team whatsoever. I don't think we're anywhere close. We're just riding in the mediocrity level, and that to me is not okay. It's not okay to just throw away seasons. I understand the grand plan is next year, but I don't know. I'm just not down with throwing away 2 seasons of Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum in this city specifically, because now, the scrutiny surrounding them is abundant. And I don't know how that really plays into a player's mind when you're trying to keep them around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of maddening. It is maddening because you can't really enjoy good things in life because they're going to be taken away when you're a Celtics fan. Like tonight, we could easily, our next game is against the Knicks. If we lose to the Knicks, this is washed away.
No, next game is against the Warriors.
Okay, so we face the Knicks on Saturday, then the Warriors on Friday. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with those 2 games. It's a waiting thing. It's a waiting thing that we continuously wait on, and it seems like we never get results.
Yeah.
It seems like we're just always waiting for results, and at some point, you just have to draw the line and say, okay, this team is I think they're better than 500, but I don't think they're championship level. And at that point, you're like, where do we slot in? Why are we watching? What are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of thought about that after the Suns game. It was one of those things where it's like, maybe this team really isn't as good as we all thought we are, or we had the potential to be. It's tough. It is tough to think about because, we do have guys like Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum who are possibly flight risks. You never know. If losing gets to them to a point to where, they're just not happy being here, there's a good possibility they leave. And it's not something that us as Celtics fans want to think about. But at the same time, it's a very real possibility. I've always had a feeling in the back of my mind, and I kind of had this feeling with Mookie Betts when he played for the Red Sox. I don't know. You're a Cardinals fan, so you don't know much about that. But when Mookie Betts played for the Red Sox, it was one of those things where it's like, yes, he's here. Yes, he's the MVP. Yes, he's our best player. But does he really want to be here? Does he really feel like it never felt like Mookie Betts really wanted to be a Boston Red Sox, or he never really wanted to be in Boston like that. So I kind of have that feeling a little bit with Jayson Tatum. And it's scary to think about because Jayson Tatum, he's probably the best thing that has happened to the Celtics in a long time. And I don't know, it's probably since Pierce. Probably since Paul Pierce, he's the best thing that's happened to the Celtics.
Or the KG and Ray Allen trades, maybe. But those were trades. Those weren't draft picks.
Exactly. He's the best draft pick we've had since Paul Pierce, and it's tough to think about. It really is. And if we're a 500 team, I don't think a 500 team is going to want to keep Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum here. And it sucks to think about. And this has kind of been a very depressing post-game show, but it's
Even though
kind of
we
coming.
won.
Even
Even
though
though
we
we
won
covered-
this game, it's not like we lost this game. We blew
It's-
out one of the best teams in the league, and
Well,
it's
this is gonna
just,
be
you know,
bad.
we're starting to think of reality. You know, reality is starting to hit only 28 games into the season, but it's starting to hit a little bit because once, all right, let's veer off from, you know, potentially losing our top two stars, and let's move into the trade deadline. Now, you talked about this a little bit earlier. If the Celtics are still a 500 team by the trade deadline, I don't see them being buyers. They're most likely going to sell off guys like Schroeder, maybe Smart, maybe Richardson, maybe Neesmith, Langford, Pritchard, whoever you think they're going to sell off. So, what do the Celtics need to do by the trade deadline at least? Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to get 10 games over the 500, but what do you think will convince them to where maybe we should try? Or who do we trade if we're still a 500 team at that point?
Well, there's an argument that this whole season has been a ploy entirely. So up to this
Which it
point,
might be.
well, like, I just think because I tried to look at over the weekend, you know, what was my perspective coming in to the season versus what it is now and what it has been, say, in November and December. And my perspective on the team shifted from this is kind of a punt season to a certain extent. We have these good pieces, better depth. We're in this line to be competitive, but we're not going to win it all. And we're going to go splurge next offseason. That was the perspective coming in. And then somewhere along the way, it was mixed into this, oh, well, we have Schroeder, and he is legitimately a sixth man of the year candidate, and we have Smart is becoming one of the best playmakers, or is having one of his best playmaking seasons of his career. And Al Horford, he looks super spry out there, and this bench unit looks so great together, and oh man, like if, you know, something goes right here, we can make a deep playoff run. And we just get caught up in this season hype of, ooh, we're coming back this season. We have these good pieces, and it looks better than last season, but it's still not up to par with the best. And I feel like, you know, maybe, just maybe, the whole plan the whole time was, hey, well, I think this actually was the plan. We're just going to be competitive. We're going to be fake competitive this season. We're going to be competitive, but only to the point in which, you know, we're making, say, the semifinals or the first round or, you know, the play-in if it really gets that bad. We're making the play-in, the semifinals, the first round, whatever it is. We're going to get knocked out in one of those 3 rounds. But halfway through the season, hey, we have Dennis Schroeder, we have Richardson, Smart, Williams, Robert Williams. They got extended. They're all on tradable contracts. We have so many assets here to go out and make a move maybe for the future or hold on to things for next offseason and make a move then rather than just continue to win with this ball club. Because I think at the end of the day, I look at some of the pieces on this team and I go, okay, we have decent players, but I'm not sure that these are players in which if you put them all on one team that they're a championship caliber team. I look at players like Robert Williams. He's very injury prone. A lot of the transitional and hustle issues the team has, a lot of them stem from him not running the floor as a big man. It's sad to say, but that's the case. Al Horford, he's obviously 35. Who knows what they're going to do with him in the future? I don't think they're going to be comfortable paying him $26.5 million next year. And then you have Dennis Schroeder, obviously. I think he's gone because they're going to look at it and go, well, we got nothing for all these other all-stars. He is a near all-star level player, Dennis Schroeder is. We're going to get something for him at the deadline before he walks for $20+ million next offseason, which will inevitably happen if we keep him around, which makes no sense. That would, you know, it would make no sense to keep him around.
Yeah.
And then you look at Richardson, you extended him another tradable contract. He's a good player. I love his effort. He's been one of my favorite just role players Celtics we've seen in a while. Plays very hard, but he's ultimately another player you look at it and go, you know, the Dallas Mavericks, they literally just handed him away, and there's a reason for that. He's a streaky shooter. He's not exactly a modern player. He's not a player you feel comfortable putting in a system necessarily for the modern NBA where you're pretty much it's centralized around shooting. And so him being a streaky shooter, I like him as a cutter. I don't know if I like him as a shooter, and that's what makes him, a little iffy to me sometimes because this team needs shooters. And you just look at this team, you're like, I don't know if this team fits together necessarily. I think we have good pieces that we can move places, but I don't think this team fits together into a championship roster. And I think while we were sitting here, like, okay, well, let's see what this team does when they're together. I don't think at any point that the Celtics front office or the Celtics organization thought like, hey, we're going to win the championship or we're going to make it to the finals this year. Because if you look at it, look at all these pieces. They don't fit together. They're all tradable contracts. They were all set up that way. And plus, you look at who's at the head coach. Ime Udoka in his first year. Not trashing on him or anything like that, but he's a first-year head coach. How many first-year head coaches go out and have major success in the playoffs? The last one I can think of is Tyronn Lue, and he had LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love.
I don't know.
So,
I thought of Nick Nurse, but Nick Nurse had Kawhi.
You're right. He had Kawhi, Kyle Lowry, but there was already an establishment there. And Dwayne Casey, that was kind of a, he propelled what Dwayne Casey had built from the season before, but a lot of credit to Nick Nurse. But that typically doesn't really happen in the NBA, and that Nick Nurse situation brought up too is very rare. And, I think we're just in this ploy right now. I think the Celtics know that they're sellers. I know that they probably are like, hey, we're going to be competitive this season. We're not going to win the championship, and we're in a spot to splurge next offseason. I think that's just the grand view. That's just the grand view. And I know it's such a broader view than just this game tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, but it is what it is. I mean, this is what the team is basically, that's what they were set up for coming into the season. And now against the Phoenix Suns, I thought, like, man, I don't know. I would sell stock on this team. I thought at one point, hey, we could make a run. We could be competitive. And, hey, maybe something plays out and we make it to the conference finals or something like that. But I just don't see it. Like, even with Jaylen Brown back, I think we're going to be better. I think we're going to be over 500 still. I don't think we're going to be lingering around 500. I think we're going to be slightly over it, but not enough to be a top team, if that makes sense. And that's just where we're at. That's just where we're at right now. And I think this team will get better. I think there's some optimism if you're just looking at it from a pure competitiveness standpoint and a standpoint of I just want to watch games on a nightly basis. I think the team's going to get better and more fun to watch with Jaylen Brown back on the court. And you saw it firsthand tonight. But broader view, this team's not going anywhere in terms of championships. It sucks to say.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I think I speak for all of us when I say, hey, let's win. We want to go out there and win. We got to get back to winning. It's hard. I understand, but man, this is part of the process. It's part of the process. It's just I'm not off this team. I'm just
I get it.
I'm not off the Celtics. I'm just in a state of
I understand
about this team. I'm not getting down about this team. I'm just sitting right in the middle going, I know this is low-key a rebuild right now. It's not a rebuild because of our competitiveness, but it's kind of a rebuild. It kind of is. We're trying to get that third star. I think that's just what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. It's kind of a semi-rebuild. It feels like we're not. I've always called this NBA purgatory, where you're not good enough to win a championship, but you're also not bad enough to get a really high draft pick to potentially.
That's where the argument comes in. Maybe we tank. Like that's a possibility. I would hate that would become the case, but I mean, seriously, we're only a couple of losses out of that 10th spot for the draft.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I don't know. It's like. It is tough because I don't know. It's hard to think about because as a fan, it doesn't matter what team you are. You want to see your team win. And that's just what it is. You don't want your team to tank unless you're the Philadelphia 76ers back when you were tanking for fun, basically. But I mean, you don't want to see your team be a bad team. But the issue with the Celtics is, and they have to make this decision, hopefully soon, What do they want to do? Do they want to tank? Because, granted, I feel like they're
I think
still
they
better
already
than.
know what they want to do.
I think they do too, but I feel like they're better than teams like the Pistons, Magic, even the Pacers, even the Knicks, even the Raptors. They're better than those type of teams, but at the same time, they're not as good as the Nets, Bulls, Bucks, Cavs, Heat, whatever. They're not as good as those teams. So I mean, I kind of want to see them tank at this point. I've never advocated for tanking by any means, but for this team, I feel like this team needs to. They just need to focus on developing what they have. Develop Romeo Langford, let him start. In my opinion, he should be starting. He's a really, really good player. He's having a really, really good season. Let Neesmith, Pritchard play more. Let Richardson come off the bench more. Give your young guys more run. See what you have in them. If they suck, put them in a trade package for Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal or whatever star you want to go after. And, that might be the plan. And I'm kind of hoping that is the plan because at least we'll know. We're not going to have the expectation of, oh, this team is going to be a championship contender. Oh, this team's going to be good. And we won't be stressing about losses like the one against the Suns, like the one against the Clippers, like the one against the Lakers. It'll be a little more stress-free as a fan, but at the same time, I'd like to see them be competitive, because we've kind of been spoiled a little bit over the last few years about being a competitive team, even though we weren't the most talented, we were always competitive. So I don't know. It's really one of those things where I guess we just kind of have to wait and see because we can speculate all we want, but there's really nothing we can do. We're just a podcast that does pre and post game shows before and after every game. But yeah, so it's a tough thought to think about. We're coming up on about 43-ish minutes.
But
we're not really talking about the game much. Is there any final thoughts or anything?
Well, this is why it's hard to do this on a day in and day out basis. Because
I agree.
This game, you look at it and it's just hard to get excited about these games nowadays because we've been hurt so many times. I mean, think about how many solid wins we do have this season, and think about how much it really doesn't matter still at this point because we're around 500.
Yeah.
And how many times that happened last season too? And
yeah.
What if this is what I was going to mention earlier too? Is what if this is just a ginormous turning point for the team? They rip off like 12 straight wins. They're 10 games over 500 by January. They're looking fantastic. They lose twice until the trade deadline, and this is the turning point. This would look really bad then.
Yeah, this podcast wouldn't age very well, but I mean, although
it would be entertaining.
It would be quite entertaining. We can definitely put together a blooper reel if this is the turnaround, but
we can already do that. There's been so many times during pregame where we need to do this, we need to do that, this team needs to do that, and they just
don't. They just don't. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about.
Think about how many games like we've come in here and been so optimistic about the team, but think about how many post or pre-games we've done and been optimistic about the team, and then come back to the post game and realize that they've done nothing that we said was needed to win that certain game. And it's just a revolving door of just the same stuff, and it's really hard to get excited over a win like tonight because tonight you look at it, you go, wow, this was kind of your model win. Some guys didn't shoot, Schroeder didn't shoot, all that same. This is also another thing I didn't mention with Schroeder. Really hard to root for someone. Like I love rooting for Schroeder, and I think he's a great fit on this team right now, at least with Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. Well, I don't know, the fit there is a little questionable, but I like his aggressiveness. Schroeder, it's hard to just watch him day in and day out knowing that he's going to be gone in like 2 months. It really is.
Yeah.
And back to this game though. This was your model win for the Celtics. Jayson Tatum, just to talk on him for a second. Jayson Tatum was absolutely phenomenal tonight. Absolutely took over the game in the third quarter and even continued it into the fourth, which is what totally shut this game out for the Celtics. That and tremendous Celtics defense, turning defensive stops into points, especially down the stretch. Tatum had 42 tonight with 4 assists, 5 rebounds. He was 7 of 13 from three-point land. That is exactly. I mean, that's really overdoing it for Tatum now, but that is super efficient from Jayson Tatum at a high volume, and obviously 16 of 25 from the field. So amazing performance from Jayson Tatum tonight. I don't like this whole Jayson Tatum talk. Is he, this guy giving enough effort? Does he care? This man cares. Okay, he does. You can see it in the number of shots he takes per game. If a dude doesn't care, he won't shoot the ball. He doesn't care. This man cares about the game, and you saw it tonight. He can take over a game. You can take over a game quick, and he's dominant. He can be a dominant player in the NBA. But if you look at this team, this team win overall, it's a model win for the Celtics. Sorry here. My cat is knocking over everything over here. So if you guys hear anything off camera, shout out Biscuit over here. But this was a model win for the Celtics in terms of you did everything you needed to do in order to pull this game out. Let's see. You beat the Bucks down the floor multiple times, and you created points off of turnovers. You didn't turn the ball over. You didn't turn the ball over as much as you typically do, and you moved the ball a lot, which of course resulted in a lot of open shots and a lot of points from the Celtics tonight. But then you look at it and you go, man, can we just continue this? And the answer is typically no. It's always no.
Yeah.
It's always the next game. They come out stagnant, bad start. Tonight's start was not good. But it's hard to get excited over a game like this because the team came out, did everything they needed to do to win, and you don't know if you're going to see it next game or not. And that's just the maddening part about this whole team and being in 500, and so many other fan bases too this year can share the same sentiment. A lot of teams are in 500 at that 500 stage right now. And I think the Celtics, they're one of those teams, and I gave the broader view. This is where you're just at a loss for words. Great game tonight, but let's see it again and again and again, even though we typically don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was gonna say any final thoughts before we end the show here?
I don't know. I gave a lot of thoughts on this team tonight. I don't know. I don't know what the viewing experience is with the Celtics. That's my thing. Because I think the Phoenix game really broke me. But if you look at, I think if we go back to the end of the year, you're like, where did Sheamus change in the year? I think it's going to be
when we didn't have a post game show for the Suns game.
Yeah,
Granted, that game ended at like 3 a.m. too, so that was just terrible.
I don't know. Like, I was feeling bad that day. We were getting our ass whooped, and you just see the Suns are a championship level team, and the Celtics, they're not. They're just not. They're just not. And it's just a hard pill to swallow. I think we'll be more competitive moving forward because Jaylen Brown's back. We saw it again tonight, or we've seen it multiple times in the past. With Jaylen Brown on the court, they're a much different team, but I still don't think they're a top-tier team, and it's just unfortunate. I don't know what this viewing experience is anymore because last season, you kind of held on, and at some point you were like, okay, you just accept this fate, and that is it. You just move on, and it is what it is. And this season, it's kind of that realization is coming earlier in the season, and now it's more of like, I don't really know what we're in for the rest of the way. So are we just going to repeat last season? We're going to be a little bit more competitive and maybe, shake something up. I don't know what's going to happen at the deadline, but I'm sure we're going to be making a move one way or another with this team, and I'm just along for the ride. Let's see what happens. That's the term of the season, other than mind-boggling, is let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's going to be game 80, and we're like, let's see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. I think my final thoughts is you kind of summed it up pretty well. Let's just ride the wave, man. There's really not much you can do. I'm kind of shocked that it only took 28 games for this team to break you. Normally, last season it took about 70-ish before we all kind of accepted the fact that they suck. But
I don't think they suck. I just don't think like they're nowhere near the Suns.
No, they're
they're
not.
nowhere
They're
near.
not.
I think in a 7-game series, you're still nowhere near the Bucks if they're fully healthy, which they're not.
Oh,
They were not healthy at all tonight. The Bucks, they were not healthy at all. And the Nets too. You look at the Nets game, and you're like, wow, they had a lot of injuries too that game, and that was a game we were supposed to be competitive in. You get blown out by 30. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. The Warriors, we'll see what happens with them. They're on a little wet the East Coast dip, but we'll see what happens with them too. It's going to be interesting.
I mean,
sure.
I guess shout out to Steph Curry. He's 2 3-pointers away from breaking Ray Allen's record, which we called, by the way. We both called that he was going to break it at MSG. We both said that. You can go back to one of the last pregame shows that we did. We both said that he was going to wait to break it until MSG. They took him out of the game, the close game. They didn't let him shoot, so he's breaking it at MSG. We both called that. Yeah.
I was wondering. I didn't foresee this. I thought those 10 threes, those 10 threes he had to hit before the Sixers game. I thought it was either going to come all in the Sixers game or he does that game, rests in Indiana, and then goes to MSG. But it just took 3 games essentially. He's just going to break it next game. Indiana put up a couple threes, hit a couple, you kind of split the 10 right there.
Maybe that was his plan.
I didn't really expect that. I don't know.
I kind of expected him to hit like 10 threes against Philly, but Matisse Thybulle. I kind of forgot about Matisse Thybulle. So
he hit 2 against Philly, I believe, and now he hit 4 tonight? No,
something like that. 3 tonight.
5. I don't know.
But
he's 2 away, 1 away, whatever he is away. He's gonna break it at MSG no matter what. And shout out to Steph Curry. I mean, he's not gonna lie. He was part of curing the depression of the Celtics season last year because he was just going off every night. You're like, Celtics suck. Warriors are 500, but hey, Steph Curry's going for 40 literally every night. So they're must-watch TV. So yeah, just enjoy great basketball, everybody. Even if the Celtics,
it's a good thing that there's a lot more better West Coast teams because after the Celtics lose, it's still like 10:30, and that's when games like the Suns and the Warriors normally start for people on the East Coast. So, or the Central, it starts whenever. But still, I don't really have much to say. This was kind of a depressing post-game show. This is kind of more of a looking at the grand scheme, the grand picture of what the Celtics are kind of post-game show. We're still happy. The Celtics beat one of the best teams in the league, the Milwaukee Bucks, 117-103. Tatum dropped 42. Jaylen Brown looked really good in his return. Scared the crap out of me when he got hurt in the first quarter. But, yeah. So, any final thoughts? I know I've said that like 5 times already, but any last things before I wrap it up?
Nope. Go Celtics. I hope we win every game from here on out. That's just the plan, I guess, in my mind, that we just win every game. But otherwise, again, just riding the way. Covering the game. Because one day, everyone, this is my final and last thought here. One day, the Celtics will reach the top of the mountain and be holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy. Whether it'll be with Tatum and Brown, I don't know. But they will reach that mountaintop, and that day will come, and we will look back at these shows and go, we were there when we were 500, and we were teetering on the brink of insanity, and we were there. We were on the train the whole time. So
definitely
these moments of either bad play, obviously not tonight, but bad play or just mediocre basketball team, they all come to pay off eventually. They do. Look at the Suns. Suns. They whooped us the other night. They're having fun. They're having so much fun, and we all saw them years ago. There was no one at that arena, so that's the plan moving forward. Just stick with it until the results come.
Definitely. Yep. These pre- and post-game shows are just archives of, the future when eventually we win the championship and we can look back on, wow, we were there when Marcus Smart shot 0 of 12 from 3, and we were there when Jayson Tatum shot 1 of 18 against one of the worst teams in the league, and we were there when Jaylen Brown was out for most of the season at the beginning of the year. And we're here with you guys every single game, whether we like it or not. So thank you everyone for watching. click subscribe, like the video, like the stream. Make sure you guys check out our personal accounts as well. Seamus, Celtics Every Day, mine, Ian Angelo. Follow us on social media. Celtics Talk Weekly on Instagram. Celtics underscore Talk Weekly on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We're on any social media there is. We are on it. Thank you again for watching. And finally, go Celtics. Let's ride the wave.
Go Pats, too.